Hi there, I'm the girlie. And while TJ is off globetrotting, you get me. Like everything else popular in culture today, what tickles the human sexual interest is ever-changing. Our fantasies are many and varied, and pop culture will sometimes cater to them from the most inexplicable sources. BDSM. Bondage and discipline, dominance and submission, sadism and masochism, still a fairly taboo subject to the uninitiated. The idea of combining pleasure with various other sensations, degrees of pain, for example, is still considered different at the very least and outright deviant at worst. So the positive effect of seeing pop culture adopt BDSM as the newest sexual in thing is debatable. Being what it is, you have to hope the subject is handled in an informative and responsible way, especially if it's expected to reach a large audience in a short amount of time. Hey, know a solid and faithful portrayal of a BDSM relationship? 50 Shades of Grey. In a parallel universe, where terrible Twilight knockfic is hailed for accuracy, and every other life form on Earth has evolved enough to tell us how fucking awful that is. I can't bring myself to begrudge certain groups hating on 50 Shades. If you go into that movie expecting it to educate you, the impression that BDSM is little more than abuse and power play isn't unreasonable, because that is exactly how it's portrayed. And so while 50 Shades can't teach you what BDSM is, it can certainly teach you what it isn't. This based only on the impression as provided by the film, and not the book, though with dialogue like, "He's my very own Christian Grey flavor popsicle. He's so soft and hard at once, like steel encased in velvet and surprisingly tasty." Well, points for Twilight-level literary harmony. The roles of Christian Grey as the dominant and Anastasia Steele as the submissive are reflected in every aspect of their lives, in their personalities, in their activities, in their attitudes and experiences. Instead of treating an interest in BDSM as one aspect of an entire personality, it becomes a symptom of the failings of both characters. Over-controlling, under-emotional, and uber-successful means dominant. Under-experienced, over-timid, and eager to please means submissive. The essence of what is wrong with 50 Shades is that they've shown someone performing BDSM who is an emotional cripple, promoting the assumption that you have to be damaged in some way to be into the scene. Your role in that kind of relationship doesn't define you. And far from being symptomatic, there's often a cathartic element involved in what you can do or what you allow to be done to you. That someone accustomed to exercising control in their daily lives should enjoy a more submissive role to release tension, or that a dominant role could help expand your comfort zone rather than cater exclusively to it. I'm speaking from an early position myself. I can't claim solid, all-knowing insight into the dominant. It's not something I fell into one day and woke up totally proficient in the next. The BDSM scene is incredibly varied. There are a great many sexual and non-sexual practices that you might take interest in, and the evolution from one to the next is gradual, not least of which because a relationship of that sort requires mutual trust, growth, understanding, and very clear boundaries. Which makes Christian Grey all the harder to swallow. He's just not a dominant, he's the dominant. Yet the movie doesn't really show us. He's meant to have so much experience. Unrealistic for his age, by the way, but understandable since he seems to prefer glossing over all that pesky time-consuming growth and trust and boundaries crap. Meanwhile, for all his airs, what we do see is pretty minimal. Some light bondage, bit of sensation play, and a whipping. Most people will discover BDSM at their own pace. They'll find some element of it that interests them and gradually work from there. A personality type like Anastasia especially would need to do so from a comfortable place, not only for her own sake but for the sake of a proper dom, one which, if they are mature and responsible and experienced, would never push her the way Christian does. Christian doesn't dominate Anastasia because that's what she's into or at least interested in. The most BDSM-ish activity in the movie is a whipping, which leaves her a traumatized, crying mess. Bringing dominance to the table doesn't serve to provide something to her. It's just a rush of control for him. The only thing he does because he doesn't do romance. His behavior skirting all kinds of sociopathic edges, and makes it clear that in order to maintain his interest, she will have to bend to his proclivities, as a proper submissive should. Never mind to the extent of a totally involved, round-the-clock, contractual relationship so early in her introduction. Because the point is not actually pushing for ultimately unwanted attention. That is selfish and sadistic. BDSM is an exploration, not an exploitation, and sticking a contract under the nose of someone under the guise of it being totes legit consent because she signed it, knowing it's the only way to keep you? Yeah. No wonder feminists decry this one. They have a point. But that's just my own take. I encourage any fellows of the scene to share their own experiences. How have your relationships compared to that of Christian Grey and Anastasia Steele? What do you think of BDSM being portrayed this way? Ironically, for a movie boasting 50 Shades, it paints too black and white a picture.